Let's talk about flat feet, also known as overpronation of the feet, pes planus. What is that? In essence, it's actually a description of the arch of your foot that's being collapsed. So if you look at my foot here, now with the normal distribution, there should be a little bit of space between the inner edge of your foot and the ground. When it comes to flat feet, that space actually gets reduced and becomes truly flattened out. And it's called by a couple different things, but we're looking at elongation of the plantar flat fascia, which is the space between your heel and the ball of your foot, and also the arch of your foot, which actually ends up getting flattened out. And what ends up happening is a couple of different things. Number one, it places a lot of stress on your calves, also places a lot of stress on your foot, but then it also places a fair amount of stress on your knees, because oftentimes flat feet will lead to caving in of the feet, hip pain, as well as sciatica-like issues, especially when it comes to irritation of the piriformis. And what's really interesting is the fact that when you're having issues with the foot, and as it translates on over to the ankle, knee, hip, and back, is that the foot is also influenced by the other components of the chain. And so when you're dealing with something like flat feet and you're given, say, an orthotic, what actually helps restore that motion, if we are not addressing the other components in what is involved with flat feet, then we're really missing a large piece of the puzzle. And so this video is actually going to be addressing from the bottom up in regards to things and activities and behaviors that will actually improve your foot position and minimizing the opportunity for flat feet. And this video is gonna be particularly good for flat feet, plantar fasciitis, as well as the development of bunions, which is going to be the translation of your toe, big toe, against the other toes as well, where you're not having the normal alignment. Now, a lot of people, and you're probably gonna hear that flat feet is hereditary. In some cases it can be, but for the most part, we often emulate the activities and behaviors of the people that we spend the most amount of time with. So if you're spending a lot of time with your family and you're wearing a lot of similar footwear, you are gonna have very similar morphological changes to your foot, which can in essence lead to flat feet, bunions, plantar fasciitis, and all the others. So let's get into it. When it comes to flat feet, let's look at the foot itself. You have your heel, you have the ball of your foot, and the outside ball of your foot. And in this area, you have your plantar fascia, you have your deep toe flexors, but then you also have your calf muscles, which actually attach and plantar flex your foot, so point your foot down. But then you also have these muscles right here we call your posterior tibialis, which wraps all the way down and helps attach and maintains the stability of your foot. Now, oftentimes with the flat feet, you're looking at flattening out and also stretching of the plantar fascia. So one of the common tricks that people will provide is actually rolling out this fascia in the first place, taking the lacrosse ball, frozen water bottle, and actually massaging that tissue. I have challenges with that recommendation, and the reason being is that when you are massaging a tissue, you're actually giving it an opportunity to elongate. And when you have flat feet, that tissue is already elongated. So in my head, I think, why would you want to elongate a tissue that is already stretched out in the first place? The other recommendation, what I would actually suggest, is actually massaging on the inner edge of your shin. Again, this is the posterior tibialis. This is actually the muscle that gets overworked as it tries to support your plantar arch. So you can take your fingers, you can find your shin bone and work on the inner edge and just do a gentle massage. You don't have to push extremely hard or aggressive. Just find those tender spots and give it a little bit of love. Again, here is your shin inner edge, massaging it. I would say find this position and massage maybe a minute to 90 seconds to 2 minutes per side, and see if there's a difference between one left versus right, and also see if there's any differences along the inner edge of your shin bone. The other area that I would actually recommend would be rolling out your calf muscles. And the reason being is that the calf muscles are responsible for plantar flexion and will also resist ankle dorsiflexion. And so what ends up happening is that if you're limited in ankle dorsiflexion, normally we should be able to push off and have enough toe up or heel up position, allowing us to pass over our foot. And as you can see from head on, I'm able to push with little to no twisting of my hip. But if I don't have enough of that ankle dorsiflexion, what's going to end up happening is that my foot is going to turn out like this. And you see how my heel turns in? This also gives an opportunity to flatten the plantar arch, but also provides an opportunity to create that bunion-like episode on the foot itself. And so you can massage your calf muscles. I usually like to use a foam roller or a massage stick, or you can even just use your hand. So you do about a minute to 90 seconds of that. But then also we can actually take a look and see, can we actually get our knee, can we get our ankle to be moving? And so the idea is that you're gonna plant your foot, you're gonna make sure that your thigh bone is in line with the second toe, and you're gonna bring your knee forward. Now, when you're doing this, you might feel a stretch right here in the ankle, or you might feel a stretch in the front of your ankle, and that will actually help you figure out what position should you be focusing on. So ankle dorsiflexion is another thing that we should be looking at. Again, can you push off without your heel turning in? Ideally, we want actually to have our heel turn out, and that actually allows us to have optimal push off. Another area to look at from the foot is how much can your big toe actually move? And the truth is that there should be enough motion. We're looking at about at least 60 degrees of pulling up, and it's moving straight up and it's not in, because that's where we're looking at the development of our bunions. That's when we're looking at development and rubbing of this area where we're gonna have the development of our arthritis. As you can see, I walk around barefoot, and this is actually where the majority of my weight will be. And we'll talk about weight distribution very shortly, but this is something that you want to be able to look at in regards to, okay, now the bottom arch of my foot is a little bit on the wider side because it doesn't come in contact with the floor. And again, it's going to be massaging your posterior tib, massaging your calf, ensuring that you have enough motion in your big toe, and also having enough motion at your ankle. So let's move up to the next portion. Let's look at the knee. Now, your knee is only responsible for bending and straightening, and so we're not going to really look much in regards to having to strengthen the knee, but I want you to be cognizant of knee position. So what that means is, here you are standing, and if I have my feet facing forward and I'm not caving in, my knees are actually facing straight forward. But if my feet turn out and my knees start to cave in like this and my feet arches collapse, as you can see, my knees actually come together. And I see this often a lot in women. We call this the Q angle because the knees will start to buckle in. A way that you can actually remedy that is actually by ensuring that your feet are facing forward and you're shifting your weight onto the outer edges of your feet. And as you're doing this, you might even notice that the arches of your feet raise. Maybe your butt gets engaged as well. And so we have our ankle, we have our knee, we also have our hips. When it comes to hips, this translates then over into our standing position. When you're standing up and you're wearing shoes or no shoes, where are your feet situated? If your feet are turned out, everything's going to be drifting forward, and that's where you can actually perpetuate that flat-footed position. What's also really interesting is that the moment I turn my feet out, I'm going to have to let my hips drift forward so then that way I can stay upright. It requires a lot of energy and concentration to maintain this position. And the moment that those hips come forward, I'm actually putting a fair amount of tension right here on my piriformis, my glutes. I'm also putting a fair amount of tension on my hip flexors and my low back as well. And so what you can do is actually vary that motion up instead of everything forward. Again, we're going to turn those feet forward, weight on the outer edges of your feet, and that's where you have the opportunity to maintain a much more neutral position. Again, not letting those knees come in. And then last but not least, if you do actually need to build up the strength of your feet, which ultimately having to build the small muscles of your foot or these muscles to try to overcome your whole body weight is a tall order. And so if you're given just foot strengthening exercises or given just a foot orthotic and not addressing the hips, you're losing a lot of positioning. So my biggest recommendation is, again, take care of your calves, your ankles, but then also be conscious of where your knees are and ensuring that everything is nice and balanced. And then last but not least, if we can make the weight distribution, the heel, outer edge of the foot, and the ball, I will ensure you that the arches of your feet will come back and you will spend a lot less time and money trying to figure out what the right shoes are and using orthotics.